Inside the tall glass building of Rainbow Tech, Jane Lee walked quickly through the front doors, her shoes making soft sounds on the shiny floor. Her heart was beating fast. After working here for 5 years, she was finally going to show her new computer program to the company bosses. The morning sun was bright through the big windows, while other workers came in with their coffee cups, saying quiet, good mornings to each other. Jane fixed her blue jacket and checked how she looked in her phone. She was 30 years old and had worked very hard to become a top computer expert. Her parents had moved from China to give her a better life, and she always remembered their proud smiles when she got this job. She thought about them as she got into the elevator. As the elevator went up floor by floor, Jane felt nervous. Her work was perfect. She had spent many months making a program that would help the company work better with customers. Even Tom, who usually found problems with everything, said her work was amazing, but something felt wrong today. Her new boss, Bob White, had been acting weird all week. He kept canceling their meetings and wouldn't look at her when they passed in the hallway. When Jane got near the meeting room, she saw Bob talking quietly with 2 other bosses in the corner. When they saw her, they quickly stopped talking, and Bob gave her a fake smile. "Jane, I need to talk to you. Can you come to my office?" he said in a strange, serious voice that wasn't like his usual friendly self. Jane felt sick to her stomach as she followed him past the meeting room, where her computer was all set up. Through the glass walls, she could see the other bosses coming in, looking at her with curious faces. Bob's office felt very cold as he closed the door. The sound made Jane jump a little. She didn't know it then, but what was about to happen would change not just her job, but would uncover a big secret that would turn Rainbow Tech upside down. "Sit down," Bob said in a voice she had never heard before. As Jane sat in the chair across from his desk, she saw her work folder in front of him. Next to it was a pile of papers, and she could see the word firing on top. The sunny morning that had seemed so nice earlier now felt scary as the light came through Bob's office windows, making dark shadows on his face that made him look different, almost like someone she didn't know at all. Bob cleared his throat and shuffled the papers on his desk. "Jane, we need to discuss some concerns that have come up," he said, not meeting her eyes. Jane's mind raced. Her work numbers were excellent, her new program was perfect, and her team loved working with her. "Your technical skills are not the issue," Bob continued, his voice getting harder. "It's more about cultural fit, your way of doing things, your communication style. It's just not matching what we want at Rainbow Tech." Jane felt like someone had thrown cold water on. She had been born and raised in America, just like Bob, but she knew exactly what he meant by cultural fit. Just then, through the glass walls, Jane saw Mike Chen, another Asian programmer, being led to a different office by Sarah, the HR manager. Mike looked shocked, just like she felt. Something bigger was happening here. "We're letting you go, effective immediately," Bob said, pushing a paper toward her. "Sign this, and you'll get 2 weeks' pay." Jane's hands were shaking, but her mind was suddenly very clear. She noticed Bob's computer screen was open to her private work folder, the one with her new program that could make the company millions. "I need time to think about this," Jane said quietly, standing up. Bob's face turned red. "There's nothing to think about. Either sign now, or you leave with nothing." As she walked out of his office, Jane saw something that made her stop for a second. On Bob's desk was a small notebook with familiar-looking code written. It was her code, but with someone else's name on top. Project Lead David Miller. David Miller was Bob's nephew, who had joined the company just 3 months ago. Jane had seen him hanging around her team's meetings, asking lots of questions about her project. Now, it all made sense. They weren't just firing her because she was Asian. They were stealing her work. As security walked her to her desk to collect her things, Jane saw other Asian employees being called into office. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Linda from the front desk, quickly taking pictures with her phone. Jane pretended to be looking for her car keys, while she sent a quick text to her old college friend Sarah, who now worked as a lawyer. "Need help? Big trouble at Rainbow Tech. Can you meet today?" What Bob and his friends didn't know was that Jane had been keeping detailed notes of every strange meeting, every odd question, and every late-night copy made of her work. She had also saved everything on a private cloud account, something her parents had taught her. Always have a backup plan. As she walked to her car, holding a small box with her desk plants and photos, Jane wasn't feeling sad, and she was feeling ready for a fight. 3 days later, Jane sat in a busy coffee shop across from her friend Sarah Martinez, the lawyer, spreading out printed emails and meeting notes on the small table. "They fired 8 Asian employees on the same day," Jane explained, her voice steady now. "All of us were leading important projects, and all of us were told it was because of cultural difference. Sarah's eyes widened as she looked through the papers. And look at this, Jane continued, pulling out her phone to show a video Linda had secretly recorded. The shaky footage showed Bob and David in the break room late one night, copying files from Jane's computer. Linda sent this to all of us who were fired. She's been watching them for weeks, worried about what they were planning. Just then, Jane's phone buzzed with a new message. It was Mike Chen. Turn on Channel 5 News now. Sarah quickly pulled up the news on her phone. Their jaws dropped as they watched David Miller, Bob's nephew, standing at a podium in the Rainbow Tech lobby. He was announcing his revolutionary new customer service program, Jane's program. But something was wrong with the demonstration. The program kept crashing, showing error messages that Jane knew all too well. She had fixed those exact problems months ago, but those fixes were in her private notes, the ones they hadn't managed to steal. Without them, the program was useless. The news showed Bob standing behind David, his face getting redder by the second, as important clients watched the failed demonstration. The company's stock price started dropping within minutes. Jane's phone kept buzzing, messages from her other fired coworkers, all sharing similar stories of stolen work and secret backups. They didn't just discriminate against us, Jane said, a small smile forming on her face. They stole incomplete work and thought they could figure it out themselves. But they didn't know about our group chat, where we've been helping each other document everything for months. She pulled out one last paper, a list of names. And look who's been trying to contact us since the news broke. Sarah leaned forward to read the list. It included names of people from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, several major news outlets, and most importantly, Rainbow Tech's biggest competitors. 3 other companies have already offered to buy my complete program, the real one, Jane said. But first, we have some justice to serve. As they talked, more messages poured in. Linda had sent new videos. Other employees had forwarded suspicious emails, and someone from the company's board of directors wanted to meet with Jane urgently. The small coffee shop table could barely hold all the evidence they were collecting. Outside, a TV in the shop window still showed the chaos at Rainbow Tech, where David Miller was trying to explain why his revolutionary program wouldn't even start up anymore. The next morning, Rainbow Tech's lobby was packed with news reporters. The company's stock had dropped 30% overnight after the failed demonstration. Inside the boardroom on the top floor, Jane sat confidently at a long table, Sarah the lawyer by her side. Across from them sat the company's board members, all looking worried and tired. Bob and David were noticeably missing. So, you see, Jane explained, opening her laptop, the program that crashed yesterday, that was version 2.1, but here's version 5.0, the real one. She turned her screen around, showing the smooth, perfect program she had actually created. The board members leaned forward, their eyes widening. Mr. Anderson, the oldest board member, took off his glasses slowly. And you have proof that this was your work all along? He asked. Sarah pulled out a thick folder of dated documents, emails, and timestamps. We have more than proof, she said. We have evidence of systematic discrimination against Asian employees, theft of intellectual property, and... She paused for effect. Recordings of Bob White and David Miller planning the whole thing. Just then, the door burst open. Linda from the front desk rushed in, her phone in hand. "You need to see this," she said breathlessly. She played a new video she'd just recorded. Bob and David were downstairs, hurriedly loading boxes into their cars. "They're trying to leave with more stolen files." The board members jumped into action. Security was called, and within minutes, Bob and David were caught in the parking. The boxes in their cars contained not just Jane's work, but projects stolen from other fired employees, too. The news cameras caught everything. Bob and David being escorted back inside, their faces red with shame. But the biggest surprise came when the police arrived. It turned out that David had a history of stealing work at his previous jobs, too. Bob had known about it, but hired him anyway, thinking they could get away with it at Rainbow Tech. As the chaos unfolded, Jane's phone kept buzzing. Mike Chen texted, "Check your email now." She opened it to find job offers from 5 major tech companies, all offering double her old salary. But there was one more email that made her smile the widest. It was from Rainbow Tech's biggest client, asking to meet with her directly about buying her program. The board members huddled together, whispering urgently. Finally, Mr. Anderson turned to Jane. "Ms. Lee," he said, looking both embarrassed and impressed, "we would like to offer you not just your job back, but a position as head of innovation, and a public apology." Jane looked at Sarah, who nodded slowly, but they both knew this was just the beginning of an even bigger plan. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. The story of Rainbow Tech's discrimination had gone viral. News channels played Linda's videos on repeat, showing Bob and David stealing files late at night. Social media exploded with stories from other workers who had faced similar discrimination at different companies. Jane's story wasn't just about one company, it had started a national conversation. But Jane had a surprise for everyone. Instead of accepting Rainbow Tech's offer, she stood in front of TV cameras with Mike and the other fired employee. "We're starting our own company," she announced. "Fair Tech Solutions, where innovation meets equality." The crowd of reporters burst into excited questions. What nobody knew was that during those 3 days after being fired, Jane hadn't just been collecting evidence. She had been talking to Tom, her old teammate, who had always supported her. Tom had secretly helped gather proof against Bob and David, and now he and 20 other Rainbow Tech employees were quitting to join Jane's new company. The biggest shock came when Linda stepped forward. "I'm not just a front desk worker," she revealed. "I'm also a major investor, and I've been looking for a company worth backing." She pulled out a check that made the reporters gasp. $10 million in startup funding for Fair Tech Solutions. Back at Rainbow Tech, things were falling apart. After Bob and David were arrested for theft, more secrets came out. They had been stealing ideas from junior employees for years, always targeting those they thought wouldn't fight back. The company's reputation was in ruin, but Jane wasn't done yet. She opened her laptop one last time and pressed send on an email she had been saving. Within minutes, phones started ringing all over Rainbow Tech's office. Their biggest client had just canceled their contract worth $50 million and signed with Fair Tech Solutions instead. Sometimes, Jane told a reporter later that day, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead. She looked around at her new office, where Mike was setting up computers, Tom was organizing team meetings, and Linda was talking to more investors. On the wall, they had hung a simple sign: "Success is the best answer to discrimination." As Jane walked through her new company, she saw faces from all backgrounds working together. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her parents. They had sent a picture of themselves watching her on TV, tears of pride in their eyes. Under it was a simple message: "You didn't just prove them wrong, you built something better." That evening, as the sun set over the city, Jane stood at her office window. Across the street, she could see the Rainbow Tech building, now with a "for sale" sign out front. But she wasn't looking back anymore. She was looking forward to tomorrow. 6 months later, Fair Tech Solutions had grown bigger than anyone expected. Jane's customer service program, now called Fair Connect, was being used by companies worldwide. Her office had moved to a bigger building, and they now had over 200 employees from all kinds of backgrounds. But the real story was happening at the courthouse. Bob and David's trial was starting, and Jane sat in the front row, watching them enter in handcuffs. They looked smaller now, nothing like the scary bosses they used to be. The evidence against them was strong: Linda's videos, Jane's documents, and dozens of witnesses. During the trial, more shocking news came out. A young intern stepped forward, shaking as she spoke. "They didn't just steal work," she testified. "They had a whole system. They would hire talented people, make them feel uncomfortable until they quit, or could be fired, then steal their ideas." The jury looked disgusted as they heard story after story. Then came the surprise witness, Bob's secretary Mary, who had worked with him for 15 years. "I kept quiet for too long," she said, her voice trembling. She pulled out an old notebook. "I wrote down everything. Every meeting where they planned who to fire next. Every late night when they stole files. I was scared to speak up before Jane showed us all how to be brave." The trial was on every news channel. Other companies started checking their own hiring practices. Jane's phone was flooded with messages from people sharing similar stories. But the biggest message came from an unexpected person, Bob's daughter. "I'm so sorry for what my father did," she wrote. "I'm in college studying computer science, and you're my hero now." Back at Fairtech, Jane had turned one whole floor into a training center. "We teach coding to people who might not get a chance elsewhere," she explained to a reporter. Many of her students were people who had faced discrimination at other companies. "The best way to fight unfairness is to give people the tools to succeed," she said. One morning, Jane walked into her office to find a surprise, a small package on her desk. Inside was her old nameplate from Rainbow Tech, with a note from Linda. "Found this while they were clearing out the old building. Thought you might want a souvenir of where this all started." Jane smiled and put it on a shelf next to her new nameplate that read, "Jane Lee, CEO and founder." That afternoon, she had a meeting with her team. They were planning something big, a foundation to help people who faced workplace discrimination. "We're not just building a company," Jane told them. "We're changing how companies work." Looking around the room, she saw Mike, Tom, Linda, and all the others who had stood with her. They weren't just co-workers anymore. They were family. As Jane left the office that evening, she passed the training center. Through the window, she saw young people from all backgrounds learning, laughing, and working together. This, she thought, was what success really looked like. Not just making money, but making a difference. 1 year after the trial, Jane stood on a big stage at the National Business Award. Fairtech Solutions had just been named Company of the Year, but that wasn't why she was shaking. She had a bigger announcement. "Today we're launching the Fair Chance program," she said into the microphone. "We're offering free training and job placement to 10,000 people who have faced workplace discrimination." The crowd erupted in applause. In the front row, her parents wiped away tears. Meanwhile, Bob and David were serving their prison sentence, but the real punishment was seeing their old stolen ideas being used to help others. The training center where Jane taught coding was now in the same building where they had once tried to destroy her career. The most touching moment came when Sarah, Jane's lawyer friend, brought a special visitor to Fairtech, Bob's daughter, Amy. "I finished college," Amy said, her voice quiet, "and I want to intern here, if you'll have me. I want to learn how to do things the right way." Jane thought about how easy it would be to say no, to hold on to anger. Instead, she remembered what her parents had taught her about breaking cycles. "Welcome to the team," she said, handing Amy an employee badge. "Let's show the world that anyone can choose to be better." That same week, a small news article caught Jane's attention. Rainbow Tech's old building was being turned into a community center, offering free classes in technology and business skills. The person who bought it, Linda, using her investment money to give back to the community. During a team meeting, Mike shared some interesting news. Their program, Fair Connect, had just become the industry standard. Companies that had once ignored them were now begging to work with them. But Jane had a strict rule. They only worked with businesses that could prove they had fair hiring practices. One evening, as Jane walked through her company's halls, she stopped at the wall of firsts, photos of their journey. There was the first team photo, the first office, the first success story. But her favorite was a new addition, a photo of Fairtech's 100th graduate getting their first tech job. "Sometimes," she told a group of students later, "the biggest victories come from the hardest battle." She looked at their eager faces and saw herself from a year ago, scared but determined. "But remember," she added with a smile, "success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right." As the sun set over the city, Jane's phone buzzed with a message. It was a photo from one of their graduates, standing proudly in front of their new office. The caption read, "Thanks for showing us that our differences are our strength." Jane smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of an even bigger change. 2 years had passed, and Fairtech Solutions had spread to 5 different countries. But today was special for a different reason. Jane was back in court, this time not as a victim, but as a witness for others. 20 more companies had been caught discriminating against their workers, and Jane's story had given people courage to speak up. Amy, Bob's daughter, had become one of Fairtech's star programmers. She was leading a new project called Equal View, a program that helped companies track and improve their hiring fairness. "I'm fixing the problems my father created," she often said. Her work had already helped hundreds of companies change their old, unfair ways. One morning, Jane got an unexpected letter. It was from Bob, writing from prison. "I was wrong," he wrote. "Watching my daughter succeed at Fairtech, seeing what you built, you proved that diversity makes companies stronger. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to learn this." The letter could have gone in the trash, but Jane had a better idea. She framed it and hung it in the training center as a reminder that change was possible. Next to it, she put up a new sign. "It's never too late to learn." Linda's community center in the old Rainbow Tech building was now full of life. Retired tech workers volunteered to teach class. Single parents learned coding, while their kids played in the free daycare center. Even some of Rainbow Tech's old board members came to help, trying to make up for their past mistakes. The biggest surprise came when Mike discovered something interesting in their company data. Fairtech's teams, made up of people from different backgrounds, were solving problems faster than any other tech company. "Diversity isn't just fair," Jane told reporters. "It's smart business." During a company celebration, Tom brought up an old memory. "Remember when Bob said you didn't fit their culture?" He laughed. "He was right. You were too good for it. So you built a better one." Everyone raised their glasses to that. That evening, Jane walked through the halls of Fairtech's main office. The walls were covered with photos, graduates getting jobs, teams celebrating successes, families proud of their children's achievement. But her favorite was a new one, Amy teaching coding to a group of kids, showing them that they could be anything they want. As she looked out her office window at the city lights, Jane remembered something her mother once said, "When they try to make you feel small, build something bigger than they can imagine." She had done exactly that. Fairtech wasn't just a company anymore. It was a movement. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Turn on the news." The biggest tech company in the world had just announced their new CEO, one of Fairtech's first graduates. Change wasn't just happening. It was spreading faster than anyone had expected. 5 years after that unfair firing, Jane Lee sat in her office at Fairtech's global headquarters. On her desk were three special things: her old Rainbow Tech nameplate, the front page newspaper from the day Bob and David went to jail, and a brand new award, Global Leader in Workplace Equality. The biggest news that morning wasn't about technology. Bob White was being released from prison early for good behavior. But instead of hiding from this news, Jane had made a bold decision. She invited him to speak at Fairtech's annual conference about the damage discrimination causes. When Bob walked onto the stage, he looked different, humble, changed. "I lost everything because of my prejudice," he told the crowd. "But look what Jane built from the ashes of my mistake. She didn't just succeed, she changed the whole industry." In the audience, Amy watched her father with tears in her eyes. That same day, Linda announced something amazing. The community center had trained its 50,000th student. Among them was David Miller's son, who had chosen a different path than his father. He was now running anti-discrimination programs at major companies. Fairtech had grown beyond anyone's dream, 5,000 employees in 20 countries. But Jane's favorite number was different: 0 discrimination complaints in 5 years. "We didn't just create a company," she told a room full of new employees. "We created proof that fairness and success go hand in hand." Later that evening, Jane stood on the roof of Fairtech's building. Next door, the old Rainbow Tech building now had a new sign: Fairtech Community Learning Center. She remembered standing in Bob's office 5 years ago, feeling scared and alone. Now she could see her company's logo on buildings across the city. Her phone buzzed one last time that day. It was a message from Mr. Anderson, the old Rainbow Tech board member. "You didn't just prove us wrong, Jane. You showed us a better way forward. Thank you." Attached was a photo of his granddaughter, graduating from Fairtech's training program. As the sun set, Jane walked through her office one last time. The walls now held thousands of success stories, people who had faced discrimination but found their power. On her desk was one final document waiting for her signature. Fairtech was now worth 10 times what Rainbow Tech had been. "The best revenge," Jane said in her final interview that day, "it's not just success, it's creating a world where what happened to you can't happen to anyone else." She looked out at the city lights, knowing that in offices all across town, people of all backgrounds were working together, being valued for their talents, not judged for their differences. And somewhere in that bright city, a young person who felt different, who felt pushed down, would see Fairtech's story and know this was just the beginning of change, and they could be part of it too.